Welcome back, Flare community. I hope you're all well and having an incredible day as always. Yes, it is Wednesday, and today we're actually going to be listening in to a live discussion from Hugo and some others, all about everything that's been happening in June. Big shout out to David. What's up, Zifnab? Hope you guys are well. Nice to see you in the chat. Let's just jump here. So this is what we're going to be listening to. I appreciate that not everyone is on X, so I always go through these and stream these just in case people want to watch it or listen to it, and we can also chat here and have a bit of discussion as it is ongoing. In addition to that, if you are watching at a later date, meaning not live, this panel is actually going to be starting in about 8 minutes time, so you can please feel free to fast forward 8 minutes and you can get into the nuts and bolts, although it normally does take a couple of minutes for them to get set up, get people up on the stage and all that good stuff. Outside the box, HK, how you doing, brother? So this is going to be all about the June recap, and as we know, there's been a lot of things happening within this past month, and also what is coming. Now, looking at the panelists here, we've got El Jefe, we've got Hugo Filion himself, the co-founder of Flare and CEO of Flare Labs, other team members of the Flare network team, and we also have two of the founders, the co-founders from SparkDEX. So this is a decentralized exchange, a big part of the DeFi application ecosystem on the Flare network, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot about these and what SparkDEX has upcoming. So I guess maybe let's go here. That's what we're going to be listening to. Let's look at SparkDEX. They did actually recently announce their roadmap. This was just a couple of hours ago. Remember, the Spark token sale is big news, but it's just the beginning. See what else SparkDEX has in store for the year ahead on Flare. This is the roadmap you need to see to believe. For those, let me know in the chat if you have been here long enough to know that the FLR token was actually originally named the Spark token, but they did change that, I think, due to popular demand. But yeah, it seems like SparkDEX has taken that historical token name for the Flare network, and they're going to be releasing the Spark token. Their roadmap consists of a in quarter 2 2025, which has actually ended the launch pad. In quarter 3, what do we have to look forward to within the next 3 months? We have SparkDEX integration. I'm not really sure what that is, but we are going to probably hear about that, no doubt. And UI UX improvements. So UI is user interface, UX, user experience. So that's basically just all visual improvements and enhancements in efficiencies, trying to reduce the amount of clicks, making it easy to click, all of that side of the things. In quarter 4, we have Insurance Vault to look forward to and a V4 DEX. Now, many of you may be familiar with, well, we've actually had quite an iteration. These V2, V3, V4, they actually relate to a Uniswap DEX, and they're going to basically be integrating Uniswap V4. So V2 was actually a very primitive version of a decentralized exchange where you supply liquidity and you can't really set any boundaries on that. Everyone's position is the exact same, just in varying amounts, and you all share a portion of the fees generated from the decentralized exchange. With V3, we saw this idea of concentrated liquidity, where you, as a liquidity provider, can define and specify the ranges in which that liquidity is used. So it's much more volatile, but you can capture a lot of the rewards. For example, in a stablecoin to a stablecoin liquidity pool, you don't want huge ranges. You want it to be very thin because you would assume that one stable coin is worth $1 and the other is also worth $1. This just provides a better experience for people looking to swap because the liquidity is concentrated, meaning that there's going to be less slippage on large orders. We've got this here, V4, and this is the integration of hooks. So little bits of programming, little nuggets that you can attach to liquidity pools, and it adds a host of potential programmability to liquidity pools. I'm looking forward to this. We're going to be learning more about it in the near future. We're just going to have to keep our eyes peeled, and I will, of course, be creating videos to keep you all updated. That's coming in Q4. In 2026, in the first quarter, AI features. And I've been on spaces before with SparkDEX, and they've talked about being able to verbally communicate with the dApp and say, or maybe, I'm not sure verbally, but definitely in human form in terms of typing, where you could type in a sentence and say, I want you to manage this position and make sure that if it falls below this bit, you know, this price, buy, and if it goes here, you know, you can basically interact with the dApp of using very natural language. So they also have, and this is a little bit of a teaser video here, they also have a token launching, as mentioned before. They're going to be launching it, by the sounds of it, through TrustSwap. We empower Web3 projects with tools and services they need to secure, launch, and market their projects. Over 100 million raised for Web3 projects, and a lot of customers too. The ticker is SPRK, and the token sale is July 15th. Now, from my perspective, when looking at tokens, I like to read the white paper first and the tokenomics. So until they have been released, I definitely won't be participating, because you should never really buy or invest money in things that you don't really understand, right? That's quite a fundamental principle here. So 15th, it's not long, 6 days time. I'm just going to have to wait and see if they release any white paper, because I will be keeping my eyes peeled for that. In recent news as well, SparkDEX trading volume, or the total trading volume, has exceeded 4.1 billion. So that is quite a large amount and great for the metrics of the Flare network. I'm sure you'll agree. These metrics entice and attract developers in addition to participants on the network, and more activity is basically just a great metric to have, in addition to total value locked, which we've actually seen increase quite a bit recently. I actually put a post out just a couple of hours ago. Here we go. Just 4 hours ago, the TVL, or the total value locked, was sitting at $223 million worth of assets. This is only increasing, but I said that I imagine it will just feel like a drop in the ocean once we see XRP-Fi coming to life. And actually, just while we're on this topic here, talking about TVL, this poll here is something that I will actually share in the chat, just to get a bit of a broader perspective on the community. This poll is talking about how much XRP people plan to put to work, and I'm going to, once this concludes in 1 day's time, jot all of these up and look at how much TVL is actually going to increase just from people who have participated in this poll. Of course, this represents a fraction of the Flare community, because I know that not everyone is on X. Right, guys, sorry to be rambling here. We are about on time. Let me just give this page a refresh and see where we're at. Okay, it seems like they've just got started. I'm going to start listening, and they probably will be, can we go here? They probably will be, right, let's get rid of this one, and let's go to Flare here, just so we can have it a nice visual up there too. Perfect. Right. What? Kind of want this here. There we go. That's good enough. Right. Yeah, no one is speaking yet. They're just getting all of the speakers up. But as soon as they do start speaking, I will be dropping down the microphone, but I will still be here in the chat listening in, and we can see exactly what's going on. June recap.
Good morning, dear Flare community. Good afternoon or good night, depending on where you are. I'm based in Valencia, Spain, so it's good afternoon for me. It's a hot day, but really nice over here in Valencia, and I hope that you guys are enjoying from all places of the world. Today, we're going to have a very interesting space in which we're going to discuss things that I'm personally really looking forward to see, not only about our June recap, but also about what's coming, right? A lot of you have been asking about what's coming up next, what is going to happen, how the incentives for FAssets is going to work, and all of that. So today I have the pleasure of having this space with Hugo and Dhruv, and also some friends from SparkDEX. Well, actually, the co-founder, so it's not a minor thing. I think we will get them right on stage as soon as possible. And I see that we already have Hugo and Thanos with me, right? So, well, maybe let's start with while we ask for the people to reshare this space, it's very important that we try to spread the word as much as possible. I just want to ask real quick to Hugo and Thanos, how are you doing today? So, how are you guys?
Good, thank you. And before we get going, let me just read out some obligatory statements. This community call is not intended as an inducement or a marketing for any particular token. And this call is not intended for and should not be acted upon by any person in the United Kingdom. The information in this call does not constitute a financial promotion under the Financial Services and Markets Act and is not directed at, intended for distribution to any person in the UK. If you are in the UK, please, do not, please disregard any information in this community call. Thank you very much. So other than that, I'm fantastic. Thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
I'm doing
Hugo.
great. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Thanos. Glad to hear that disclaimer. I think we're all ready now. And I see that we have Steve. Steve, how are you doing today? All good?
I hope you can hear me, everybody. I'm fine. I hope everybody's fine too, and I will try to make the best out of this space.
We will for sure make the best out of this space. For the people that do not know me, my name is Victor. I go by the name of Quantic on this crypto Twitter niche, and I'm a DevRel here at Flare. It's my pleasure to host this space today. Like I mentioned before, we're going to talk a little bit about the past month's recap, right? We're going to talk about key developments from the past months. We're going to talk about FAssets incentive program. That means what you need to know and how to, how to. I want to say this in the right way to remain compliant with the Hugo's disclaimer. How to make the most out of it, let's say. And then we're gonna talk also about ecosystem growth. Like I mentioned, we have the friends from SparkDEX today, and they have some interesting things to discuss without about upcoming plans and exciting new developments. So I think that the purpose of this space is quite clear. I already asked you guys if you can retweet to reach as many people as possible. And also at the end, I have pre-selected a few questions from the community. So if you have been actively participating on Flare and still have some questions to do, I think we are going to be able to cover that. If not, you can always ask me after the space in DMs or whatever. I'll try to do my best to reply to everyone. So let's move forward with the space. The first question is actually for Hugo. We're going to talk about the 100 million XRP deal with Vivo Power. I think this is a huge validation of Flare as the infrastructure for institutional grade DeFi, right? So then the first question would be, what does this really unlock for the sort of XRP-Fi vision going forward?
Absolutely. So let's just recap what that Vivo Power deal was. So for those of you that don't know what Vivo Power is, haven't been following that closely, it's the first XRP treasury company listed, I believe, in the US. They are a company that has assets and revenue generating businesses in a number of areas, particularly things like solar power. And they have been essentially pivoted their corporate strategy to become an XRP treasury company. That means they're raising money to buy XRP. I believe there's some idea around their revenues from their existing businesses being converted into XRP, but I believe that for Vivo to clarify, but that's my understanding. But in short, they are a company that is building something similar to a MicroStrategy, but for XRP. And one of the key and really important things that they want to be able to do is to be able to increase the amount of XRP held by that company over the long term. And there's a number of different ways to do that. And there's a number of different ways the markets have been creating to do that with regards to debt structures and things like that. But one of the things they approached us about was yield, being able to get a return on their XRP. As most of you know, XRP does not currently have any form of yield, and therefore, if they buy 100 XRP, that's all they've got. Whereas, yield has been a very a very extensively utilized strategy across the space, both in conventional staking with proof of stake, but increasingly more in terms of being able to put whatever assets you have to work managed by an external, effectively money manager who manages a vault on your behalf, and they take a fee for that. And so, yield is incredibly important. It's the lifeblood of all finance. And what we are trying to do with Flare is to create effectively a market and a yield market and uses for XRP for essentially the third largest asset in the space. Of course, Tether might be slightly bigger than XRP, but XRP is the third largest pure crypto asset. And so Vivo approached us, and they liked the presentations we gave them. They liked the partners we've onboarded to create this yield market, and they committed 100 million of XRP to the XRP-Fi ecosystem on Flare. So that's a very large initial commitment from a listed company, and I think that really just gives us extensive validation of what we're doing, extensive validation of the people we've partnered with to do this with, especially Firelight. And I think for us, it's the first check-in being 100 million is a good number, but I don't expect it to stop there.
100%, and I don't expect it to stop there as well. Like you mentioned, it's a great sign, and something that I think not that many are thinking about is how the yield allows for a yield market, right? Not just like the yield of the asset, whatever, but a market around this, and it's going to be very interesting to say the least. Now, when it comes to Vivo Power, of course, they are not just deploying this idle XRP into staking, but they are sort of building a regenerative loop with XRP, Ripple USD, and Flare DeFi strategies, right? So, in your opinion, how do you see this model evolving for asset managers and treasuries beyond crypto native players?
So I think this is a model that, every company in the world, of any size, they have a treasury department. And that treasury department's job is to make sure that the assets on their balance sheet are generating as much as possible or costing as little as possible through, financing mechanisms, sale and lease back of assets that have a high capital value, all these kind of things, and this is just traditional TradFi, probably some of the dullest kind of finance you can be involved in. Being a treasury manager for a large corporate, it's very different to say being a hedge fund. And what you've got in crypto is this huge amount of assets, but with very, very minimal infrastructure around it for people to effectively, the very nascent markets. If you're Coca-Cola and you're sitting on $50 billion of foreign currency, there's very, very well-trod paths with which to manage that. Then same cannot be said for people sitting on huge amounts of crypto assets. There's a few areas to put it, or a few ways to leverage them to make more, to get a yield. And that's what we're building for XRP, is one of the core ways to leverage them to get that to get that yield. But of course, for crypto natives, they can play around with DeFi strategies as much as they like, and they can be pretty successful, and they can do MEV, and they can do all of these things. But if you're a large fund just sitting on an amount of a crypto asset like XRP, you don't necessarily have really well knowledgeable DeFi traders sitting there if XRP is like between 1% and 7% of your portfolio, right? You're not necessarily going to dedicate vast amounts of internal resources to do that. So our job at Flare as an ecosystem is to make sure that they have the routings by which their assets can be put to work without them having to do a lot of additional work. And this is, again, where Firelight's going to come in. There's going to be lots of strategies beyond just staking, strategies that allow people to put their institutional XRP to work and to get a yield on it without having to employ a whole team internally. So I think that's how this will unfold with people that are sitting on these assets over the longer term.
Yeah, I think that also people kind of underestimate that program, right? And I think that you mentioned very clearly, which is, okay, I have 100 million in my treasury of US dollars. How can I optimize that? There are some very clear paths. However, when you go to crypto assets, and specifically very large assets like Bitcoin and XRP, it's not quite clear, and we need more infrastructure, and this is certainly a huge problem to tackle. And so very interesting on how things are going to evolve with Flare from that point of view. And then when it comes to Firelight plus FAssets, it seems to me that these are kind of the rails for this new institutional loop. But then what's Flare's like kind of long-term role in shaping compliant and productive use of XRP?
Yeah, so of course, FXRP is the first step for that. In order to get into Firelight, you need FXRP. And I think, yes, Firelight and a number of the other applications on Flare, such as CTP stablecoin, will be the basis for, the first basis for putting XRP to work. Firelight isn't going to be just a staking mechanism for AVSs. It's also going to be for institutions. It's going to be a set of financial products, from insurance, from using XRP for liquidity against real world assets and charging a fee from vault strategies that can be optimized depending on risk levels. So Firelight's kind of like a kind of catch all product with regards to how you put your XRP to work. And I think I think very likely in my mind to become really the core default yield engine for XRP, certainly for earn programs, and certainly for we all know that XRP is held by many institutions. That's been one of the core things of XRP, that it's been essentially distributed to many large institutions who are sitting with XRP on their balance sheet, and not currently earning either very much or nothing at all. And Firelight really is the first serious institutionally focused product to be able to take in that XRP and do something useful with it.
Yeah, and the more I think about this, the more I think about ways in which Firelight can help staked XRP move like fluidly into DeFi, right? And I think that this is a great segue to ask to Thanos, actually our DeFi analyst, about well, actually this, like how will Firelight help this staked XRP move fluidly into like the different DeFi products on Flare, meaning like lending, stable coins, LPing, maybe some other creative ways that you might be thinking of?
Yeah, for sure. So the way to think about Firelight, it really is kind of that first step or that first door that a lot of people think about when they think about XRP yield, effectively just staking. From there, you can then take, let's say, what's called an LST or a liquid staking token, and be able to functionally use that in DeFi. Can borrow against it, can lend it out. There's a lot of different primitives that we're currently looking at, one of which is like a collateral debt position. So effectively, you deposit XRP, can then borrow a stable coin against it. And you decide how much yield you want to pay or how much interest you want to pay, right? There's also things that you can do by LPing it into, let's say, Kinetic, which currently already exists, or let's say LPing into a SparkDEX pool, so you're providing liquidity for people that are swapping. Now, those are just a couple things that currently exist that users that are on-chain savvy can use. Um, that being said, as Hugo has mentioned before, not all people are super on-chain savvy, and that's totally fine. And we've been speaking a lot about institutions using Flare, right? But for us, it's not only about accessing institutional XRP, it's also about reaching those institutions that represent a lot of the people that hold XRP, right? So obviously we have Uphold, has been one of the first announcements alongside Vivo Power. We're speaking to a lot of other institutions where there's people there's everyday people that hold XRP on those exchanges can opt in and earn yield from Flare and the products that we're building, right? So not only are we speaking to institutions, we're speaking to institutions that hold assets on behalf of retail and people that are using it every day. So there's a bunch of different angles that we're going, right? Ultimately, the core piece is delivering yield back to users that are holding XRP today. There's a variety of ways that you can do that. Firelight, kind of how I think about it, is that first stop for many people that want to set and forget, and then there's active strategies that you can run from there, right? So there's a few different active strategies that we've been thinking about that you could run. There's like synthetic longs that you can have to hedge the position and then like borrow against the XRP and then run some delta neutral positions. There's a bunch of different ways that you can run, let's say, financially engineered strategies that can deliver extra yield back, let's say, past Firelight. But how I think about Firelight is that it's going to be a revenue positive business that simply delivers revenues back to XRP holders. And how or why is this possible? Well, if you think about capital as a whole within finance and DeFi, there's really this thing that sticks in most financial managers' minds, which is the risk-free rate, right? So when you have the US dollar and you're looking at yields and you're like, well, this specific stock can return me, let's say, 6%. But if the treasury yield or the risk-free rate, which is generally the 10-year treasury, is returning you 4%, your risk to reward ratio is essentially you're only earning 2% over the specific treasury or the 10-year, right? With XRP, there is no risk-free rate, right? You're simply just holding the asset. So the hurdle rate all of a sudden is 0%. Today, no one earns anything on XRP. So when you introduce yield to it, there's essentially a competitive barrier that we have for percentages that we're willing to deliver back to XRP, that functionally any other assets in crypto generally don't have, especially if they have native staking, right? So if you're deploying ETH today or you're deploying Solana today, there's a set amount of staking yield that you earn. So if you're deploying it anywhere as a capital asset, you have to earn at a minimum that staking rate or more, right? With XRP, there is no staking rate, it's just zero. So all of a sudden, we're unlocking a capital asset that has a risk-free rate of today, which is zero, right? Obviously, to earn some yield, there's risk involved, right? Like there's some risk, but obviously you can hedge those things, et cetera. But nonetheless, that's generally how I think about Flare as an ecosystem. We're unlocking capital that has a risk-free rate of zero today.
That's a great way to put it, and a very compelling vision, to be honest. And then I'm kind of wondering about these other assets because, okay, you can think about Firelight's architecture like a sort of opening the door for other non-EVM assets that goes like even beyond XRP. So my question would be, and this goes maybe for both of you or whoever wants to answer, if we could see like a kind of similar treatment for Bitcoin and Doge, and maybe others, or it's going to be completely different? What are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
go ahead, Hugo.
yeah. I mean, I think there's an opportunity in Bitcoin. It has a similar profile to XRP in that there is no natural risk-free rate. So that's a big one. But one that I know there's a lot of demand for, again from institutions, is XLM, Stellar. So certainly thinking about adding that to the roadmap.
Yeah, I think
And
we're definitely full force ahead with XRP right now, and I think it's our major focus. I think it's where a lot of our community's assets are held, and that's going to be the first asset that I think that we really come to market with. I would say Bitcoin is a little bit more competitive just because of how large it is. um I think for us, like the XRP community is the main focus right now, and I think with protocol managed wallets we can introduce other chains a lot easier for bridging in and out. um XLM is top of mind for us. Been thinking about Cardano as well, or Doge, right? Just whichever assets I think have generally been not talked about as much. That's that's what we think about XRP today, and that's why that's our main focus. It's also the largest market of the assets that we've named.
XRPs or XRPFi is fully deployed on Flare, and people can see how these markets operate and the kind of opportunities. For sure, we will see other assets following. And then my next question goes to a very interesting news from Uphold that is exploring XRP staking via FAssets. This is certainly very big, if you ask me. And then the question is, do you expect more exchanges to follow, right? And could FAssets become the default yield engine that's powering XRP and programs across these different exchanges?
So I think there's an interesting parallel here, and just to caveat it, obviously nothing I say, is meant to be news. But we are talking with a number of other exchanges, very very large XRP holding exchanges, obviously, and those are very very positive. But what I think is a very interesting parallel is that when we launched Flare, the way we launched Flare was that effectively we each exchange needed to agree to distribute the Flare token in order to receive the Flare token. And this was based on how much XRP they held at the time. And what we found when we went through that process, and we kind of had a expectation that this might happen, but we didn't know how successful of a strategy it would be until we put it in place, was that we got that program started with a couple of smaller exchanges agreeing to distribute the token, and very quickly I got called up by larger and larger exchanges, effectively saying our clients who hold XRP are pinging us in social channels and various different places and saying, are we going to receive the Flare token? And we're finding that if we don't give them an answer, that they're moving their XRP to other exchanges. And I think that's going to be very, very similar with being able to offer yield on XRP by an exchange. I think those exchanges that sign up and agree to effectively use Firelight and FAssets through Flare, they will be net recipients of XRP from other exchanges. And so I think very quickly those other exchanges will follow suit.
Yes, and this is of course not financial advice and none of that. Just a call to action to the community that sometimes ask me, how can I help Flare and whatnot? Maybe consider when you talk with your friends that are using these exchanges, what are they thinking about XRP rewards and whatnot? That's always helpful. Uh, Anyways, I think that we're in a good time to transition towards something that a lot of people have been asking about, which is this 2 billion Flare incentive program. I think this is kind of a milestone or maybe a shift from bootstrapping to scaling. So I'm wondering about, like, from your point of view, what success looks like kind of beyond TVL, right? Because we know that TVL is probably going to increase with all of this. So but beyond that, are we talking about like integrations or protocol quality or long-term retention? How does this program will help to boost all of this?
So I think to start, it's important to set the program in context. It's a program that will be rolled out, but it's going to be very, very responsibly managed. So although it has 2 billion as a headline number, it'll be managed. The yields on various different DeFi applications, because it will only be distributed to those who participate with their assets in DeFi. The yields aren't going to be absolutely insane. They're going to be a reasonable level to incentivize capital to come to Flare, and that probably means will not end up paying out all of that total incentive plan. It's just a headline number of the total amount available for the incentive plan. And really it's there, we talk about bootstrapping, but really it's there to bootstrap XRP-Fi. It's there to make sure that when we launch FXRP, and when Firelight launches, and when the CDP launches, the CDP-based stablecoin, and when SparkDEX onboard both FXRP and staked XRP, that there's sufficient incentive to get people over the hurdle of playing with these assets, using these assets, to get them to bootstrap liquidity in XRP. I want there to be, by the end of the year or by mid next year, I want the DEX liquidity of FXRP and of staked XRP to look really good. I want there to be, high volumes, and just a large amount of those assets LP'd. I want there to be, I want the debt ratios in the CDP to be, safe, and I want there to be a very large amount of CDP-based stablecoin issued. So, the whole program is structured to help this roll out, to get people over the, initial teething pains of LPing to a DEX, of borrowing stables against their XRP, of there being enough liquidity for staked XRP against FXRP. All of these kind of things are the reason for why the program exists. Trove, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so the program as a whole, I think, is more or less helping us focus on getting the right platforms and liquidity in the right places set up for XRP-Fi to be successful, which I think Hugo generally covered some of the places that we're looking at. Ultimately, XRP, in order to thrive, needs stablecoins to be borrowed against it for people to trade positions, like be able to just use XRP as a whole within the ecosystem. And bootstrapping it is, one, not easy, and two, to attract the right types of capital partners and institutions. It's generally needed. And so yeah, like I don't like it sounds like a big number, but a lot of what we're doing, I think, is like just setting up the foundational pieces for what Flare's DeFi ecosystem is going to look like over the course of the next year. Um, I mean, I imagine we introduce XRP very soon here as the first FAsset, and then from there we'll continue moving forward. But yeah, I think we've mostly covered it. As for what like the DeFi ecosystem is going to look like over the next year or so with these incentives.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this shapes the future of XRP-Fi. And talking about like the different focus areas, let's think about DEXs, lending, CDPs, and yield derivatives. And when it comes to like expected sort of behavior from users and institutions, what are you like expecting to unlock with all of this? And maybe if there is any sort of new DeFi primitives that you are particularly excited about, I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I can run with this. So one of the first ways to borrow ever on chain was a CDP that was Maker. Um, and so that's one of the first ways that was like enabling people to borrow. Then thereafter, we saw Aave and Compound build some of the largest lending protocols on chain. But if you look at the way that their rates are dictated, it's still largely dictated by the way that Maker is lending out and like what the rates people are taking on that CDP is. So it very much is like a core foundational structure as to like what we're looking at to build out a DeFi system. There's then been a bunch of different or a bunch of new primitives this year that I've found generally very exciting. If you look at the largest stablecoin growth over the last like 2-3 years, it was Athena, because they were essentially what they were doing is scalping a carry trade where they would short the perp and then hold a spot. So the position is completely delta neutral. You can't lose money on holding that position. And they were getting paid to be able to do that because people were longing the perps. They would pay the people that are short, and then you would get a carry from that. That carry, especially during a bull market or when people are long the assets, pays decently well. And it turned into it turned into the largest yielding stable coin in crypto, and has blossomed extremely fast this year or this past couple of years, right? So like looking at ways of using XRP and the XRP funding rate to deliver yield back to a stable coin, that's something that I've been thinking about recently. There's um there's been a lot of talk about CLOBs or central limit order books that I've found generally very interesting, and I'm thinking about how we can get Flare there as well. So CLOBs, they're slightly different than how a general AMM like SparkDEX operates, but I've been thinking as to how we can bring that to Flare as well for better execution and like it makes it easier for LPs to essentially provide liquidity on those as well. So been taking a look at that as well. There's a few primitives that I think that we have our eyes set out on, and we're definitely going to bring here. I would say Morpho and Euler modular lending protocols have also done extremely well, which slightly differ from the CDP and the Aave and Compound builds. Every single one of these builds are so close, but also so different in terms of like how you think about providing liquidity there. And then we've also been thinking about a yield trading venue, so like Pendle or Spectra. These types of yield trading apps essentially allow people to trade the yield on the token. So if you hold staked XRP, let's say you're expected to earn, let's say, uh, this is not by any means a number that we've been thinking about, but I don't know, let's say like 50%, right? And then that yield of that stable or of that token goes up and down depending on how much money that the AVS is making. People can trade that yield in and essentially deliver a fixed yield to a person that just wants a fixed amount of yield on that token, right? So that was a major unlock this year as well. So there's a handful of DeFi stuff that I've been very intrigued by and looking at to figure out, well, what we can bring to Flare and make XRP just more composable on chain. But there's a plethora of things I've named a bunch of stuff off, but if anyone has any questions, obviously happy to answer. But yeah, that's mostly what I've been looking at.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and for sure, I'm gonna try and pick up your brain later on some of these topics. But right now, since I have to honor time, I kind of have to move forward. And actually, I want to do a little bit of a mix of two questions that I have, because FAssets are inherently composable, right? So then one part of the question would be like, how are the incentives designed to drive utility across these different protocols, and not just like the isolated liquidity? And connected with this, we can maybe utilize some of the learnings from FIP09 and early Airflare rounds influenced with this new, more flexible incentive structure. So if you could comment on that, would be great.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's a flywheel of ways that we want people to leverage XRP. Um, and you want to incentivize in places that you think will be sticky, even if the incentives weren't there, right? So incentives obviously lead to a massive inflow, and then as you taper the incentives, does the liquidity stay there? And that's like the hardest part to get right. So there's like how I think about it is that there's one step at a time, and essentially incentivizing people to go continue taking steps down that down into the tunnel, like, and then once they're too far in, or like once they've started using so many different dApps on your chain, functionally unwinding that entire position to go to another chain becomes like a bit annoying, and that just essentially keeps them on your chain, right? And so that's what's happened to me. There's a few chains that I've always used, and like you start just going down the rabbit hole of using all these different apps there, and it becomes one of the main chains that you use. So there's a functional stickiness to getting people to do like one step at a time, and that's how I think about incentives.
Yeah, one thing I can say is that designing an incentive program is never an easy task. And well, like you mentioned before, I think one of the main things to optimize is that not only the liquidity arrives, but it's sticky. And so far, we have been doing a great job with stable coins, right? So I actually want to connect with what's coming up next. So this question would be for Hugo, right? So everybody's waiting for FAssets. So after months of development, testing, community feedback, we went through Songbird. FAssets are certainly entering their final sort of rollout stages. So the big question that everybody's probably asking here is, what's the latest update on FAssets and FXRP in particular?
Absolutely. So obviously, I never give like firm dates, but you know we've always taken a very security conscious view. I mean, we even launched a whole bloody other network called Songbird to test all of our protocols, and that's why it exists. It's kind of always shocking when you hit something that you think has very, very strong indications of product market fit. As we've started talking to these very, very large institutional players that are sitting on, literally billions and billions of dollars worth of XRP, we've been working through, with them how to, make sure that they're comfortable. And so one of the things we have done with FXRP is, we've used two separate auditors for the FXRP contract, and we've essentially just waiting for the last audit to come back. The team have been working with the auditors sort of daily, just answering any questions, making sure that the understanding of the contract and how it works is perfect, and just looking for that perfect audit from a very, very well-known auditor, as that will make our job when it comes to onboarding these very, very large institutions endlessly easier. So just waiting for that, and then as soon as that comes back, we will launch FAssets.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that everybody has been waiting for this, myself included. There's been a lot of excitement, some people getting a little bit frustrated. And I kind of understand, right? We all want to see it go live as soon as possible, but think about this, and this is for a message for the community. Most of the time when you launch something in crypto, you have absolutely no idea about product market fit. In our case, it's kind of different because we actually know that there is a very, very strong demand, and we have tested this on Songbird for FAsset. So the most important thing for us should be always security, and that the launch goes as flawlessly as possible, right? So Hugo, since I'm asking about when, let me follow up with the following question, which is, when can users start taking action through Firelight, whatever this means?
So they can sign up for Firelight pretty soon. Signing up for Firelight I don't want to talk for Firelight, but signing up for Firelight should give you an initial allocation. I expect the allocations to go extremely quickly. And so, that's why you would sign up. And obviously, the earlier you are into a protocol, especially Firelight, the more likely that you will get better rewards. I know that Firelight will be rolling out in phases, having a cap to start with, and then raising that cap, just as we will be doing with the FAssets. And so, I think the way the economics work, I'm sure they'll release a full economics paper. But the way the economics work is, if you're in an earlier stage, you'll get a better, return. So that's Firelight. I believe their waitlist is opening up very, very soon. They've put their information out about that. Just follow their Twitter handle.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone in the space, make sure to follow Firelight for the next good news. I think it's just a couple of days. And now I think it's a good time to talk a little bit more about DeFi on Flare and SparkDEX, right? Today we have both of the co-founders of SparkDEX with us, and we really want to discuss some of the upcoming news on their end. For those who are not aware, over the weekend, Flare's TVL hit 220 million for the first time. I think we're around there right now. Not sure. I need to refresh the TVL page, but it is certainly a huge driver of the growth in the Flare DeFi ecosystem. SparkDEX is one of the leading protocols, right? Just crossed about 4 billion in trading volume, and of course that makes it like the leading DEX on Flare. So then the first question, of course, you guys can introduce yourself, but also tells us a little bit more about SparkDEX growth because it has been very fast. I want to know like what's kind of the secret sauce and how do you plan to keep that momentum now that you're gonna have like this IDO after the IDO?
Hey guys, Alexi here, so co-founder along with Steve for SparkDEX. Yeah, it's definitely been fantastic growth with great support as well from the Flare team and community. So a huge shout out to all of you. Look, I mean, obviously sustaining the growth, we've got quite an interesting roadmap and quite a few new products in the pipeline that will be coming out. Obviously, one of the things I believe will help with the growth will be incentives as well from the new token launch, which is pretty exciting and coming up fairly soon. Don't want to speak too much about that. But yeah, look, on the roadmap, some of the things that I find fascinating, I think are super interesting, and as actually Thanos had mentioned before, is club dexes. So for those that don't know, a club dex is a central limit order book dex. These are the normal exchange trading systems that you find on centralized exchanges. That's something that it's further down the roadmap, but that's something that we're actually looking to bring on chain. Before that, though, one of the new products that we'll be introducing in the coming months would be what I'm going to refer
It seems
to
that we
liquidity
lost Alex.
model. So what was that?
Oh, sorry. At least on my end, I kind of lose the signal for one moment.
Yes, you was
Yeah, we
gone.
lost
You
you.
was gone, Alexi.
Okay, what did I cut out, guys? I want to make sure that I was hearing everything. Can you guys hear me? Or bad
Now,
connection
yes,
on
Yeah,
my
yes,
end?
yes.
we
Now,
can hear
yes.
you. We can hear you.
Awesome. So yeah, I was mentioning that obviously central limit order book DEX is something further down the roadmap that we'll be looking to bring on chain. This is the most efficient way of trading. Essentially, that's what all centralized exchanges and TradFi exchanges use. Before that, what we're looking to bring first is a newer version of a concentrated liquidity DEX. So very similar to the concentrated liquidity DEX, the Uni V3 fork that we have. We have our own version, essentially, of a V4, which is same thing as the concentrated liquidity DEX, but with hook functionality plugins. And what this essentially will allow builders to do is so people can come, build out some plugins, build out a hook, and allow for even more efficient liquidity. Imagine, as an example here, to kind of keep it simple, imagine you have built out a hook that you deploy the liquidity into, and the out of range liquidity that is being inefficient and isn't being utilized on the DEX could be deployed into a lending market, let's say, such as Kinetic. So you're earning a yield on the liquidity that isn't being efficiently used in your LP position. So that's one example of what you can do with these hook functionalities. So that's one thing that we'll have coming shortly. Obviously, look, we've got the launchpad coming to help support the growth of the entire Flare ecosystem as well. Some other really exciting things that I'm looking forward to as well, which I believe will help continue the growth of SparkDEX on Flare, is we'll be releasing a strategy hub shortly. So this is in partnership with a product called SparkDEX, and essentially what this will be is a one-click way for people to essentially just generate yield on their assets. So imagining depositing XRP or any type of FAsset or ETH or a stablecoin in a one-click way into a vault and earning a yield on it. On the back end, it will be deploying delta neutral strategies. And there's also an interesting part to that where SparkDEX will be offering insurance vaults as well. And through these insurance vaults, you can take out insurance on a variety, through obviously governance with our token when that's launched. We'll do governance as to what products and protocols we want to offer insurance for as well. So I think these are some of the things, essentially just innovation. So continuing to just keep building, working with the Flare team, working with the Flare community, and also, honestly, seeing what the community in general wants as well. There's no point building out and deploying products that no one in the community wants to utilize.
Super clear. I'm glad to hear about the innovation aspect. For me, it's always exciting to hear entrepreneurs talking about that on a space that moves very, very fast. And when we are on an ecosystem that has so many problems that we can tackle, right? So I'm wondering a little bit about the IDO and if you guys can kind of break down how Spark accrues values. Is this like via revenue share or maybe staking? And if there's like any interesting future use cases that you are particularly excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't want to be shilling the token too much, just to make that clear. But look, obviously the value prop of the token will be essentially 50% of the revenue generated from the protocol will go to stakers of the Spark token. 50% will be used to buy the Spark token and burn it. So that way we're also generating a yield for Spark stakers, essentially like a sinkhole, and we're also burning and taking tokens out of circulation. There'll also be governance. So we want the entire protocol to essentially just be 100% governance, run by the community as much as the DAO as possible, and also through these insurance vaults as well. So there's multiple different value accrual mechanisms, and we're always open to through innovation as well, thinking of new ideas that can accrue value to obviously believers and token holders.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think that people obviously were asking about that. And speaking of that, maybe we can have a sort of short call to action. Where can the Flare community learn more about Spark and how to get involved in the IDO in general?
So we're going to have some more information dropping out soon. I think a new light paper has just dropped today. I'll need to check with the team if that's just come out. More information about the launchpad, which look, I'm not so much involved with the marketing team. That's not my area of expertise there, but I believe they have started doing some teasers. We're also working in conjunction with the Trust Swap team as well, which is one of the OG launchpad operators. So we're kind of doing a joint launchpad with them. So keep in tune. So keep up to date, obviously, on our TG channel. You can obviously go check out the Spark domain as well. You'll be able to find some docs there. You'll be able to find the light paper there. And obviously keep an eye out on Twitter as well for any information and posts that we're dropping.
Thanks. Yeah, I would 100% encourage people to follow along what you guys are doing with the SparkDEX and stay on top of things. And one final question, though, which is about SparkDEX and the key role that you guys play with XRP5. So from your side, from your perspective, how will you help turn XRP into a productive yield-bearing asset in a compliant DeFi environment?
That's a great question. That's a fantastic question. So there's a few different pieces of infrastructure that we'll be delivering shortly. Some of those will be what I just mentioned. So obviously, look, LPing on the DEX, very simple, very straightforward. Once the V4 DEX with hook functionality drops as well, through hooks, you'll be able to do obviously LP on the DEX. At the same time, be leveraging your position there on a lending market like Kinetics. One of the things we're actually looking into right now that I think will be massive is being able to use LPs as collateral. So imagine you create a FXRP LP on SparkDEX. You can take that LP receipt token, deposit that into a lending market such as Kinetics, and then borrow against that. Let's say you borrow some stable coins and then LP those stable coins. So you're essentially doing a delta neutral way to generate some extra yield on top of XRP. With that said as well, final piece I'll add there is this strategy hub that we'll be deploying as well. So I think, Fass kind of spoke about this a bit as well, but we'll have essentially an XRP vault where in a one-click way, user can deposit it into that vault, get optional insurance as well if they would like to. And on the back end, it will be deploying certain strategies. Thanos mentioned strategies such as like farming different funding rates behind the scenes and on perpetual exchanges, things such as that, looping strategies, etc. And then there'll obviously be more in the works as well. As the Flare ecosystem develops, there'll be more opportunities to obviously generate yield as well with XRP. And one thing I have to just say as well to the community out there, I think this is absolutely a huge and untapped market that Flare is tapping into. As we know, the XRP community is massive. Now, obviously, it's one of the top tokens, multiple billions in FDV, and there's no way to, at the moment, aside from Flare, obviously, essentially generate a yield on that XRP as well. So I think that's a huge market and something super exciting for all of us to be looking forward to, as that's going to be flowing into the Flare ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that is going to come clear after this space for the people that listen is that the opportunity goes like very far beyond what you can imagine, only from having staking on an idle asset, but also the entire DeFi ecosystem that Flare is building around that. So I think that that's going to be certainly very, very interesting. Now, I think I have to honor time, but we do have some questions from the community. I have curated some. So let's see. I think the first one is actually from Atlas TSO. So there is one for the SparkDEX team, and then there is one for Hugo. So for SparkDEX, the question says, I did a poll and the number one issue XRP users had with the DEX is fearing or not understanding impermanent loss, right? So what actions will the team take to educate, explaining what impermanent loss is and why it's not bad most of the time, and give SparkDEX tokens to cover the losses, if any?
Yeah, so look, this definitely comes down to education. I definitely, look, being honest here, I think education is something that the SparkDEX team could do a little bit better. Honestly, I think most DeFi protocols out there in general could do better about this. So impermanent loss is definitely something that needs to be always considered whenever LPing on a DEX. Now, obviously, impermanent loss affects different LPs differently, right? Affects more volatile assets, such as, let's say, you're LPing a ETH USDC position. Obviously, impermanent loss will affect that more as the price and the ratio of ETH USDC changes. If you're LPing more stable assets, let's just say like an ETH, FLR ETH, obviously there, because it's a stable one-to-one asset, or like stable coins as an example, there is an impermanent loss in that regard. Normally, what you would rely on is obviously farming incentives to help make up and cover that impermanent loss. Some of the things that we're also going to be looking into the future, and this is what comes with innovation, is essentially being able to hedge your impermanent loss. Protocols have tried this in the past. It hasn't quite worked out, but I think this is where hooks and like a V4 DEX, for example, can play a key role, where you can essentially create an LP position with a certain hook and hedge the impermanent loss. So essentially taking a trade out on a perpetual position, whether it's longing or shorting the asset, depending on the price movement asset, to hedge that impermanent loss. Hopefully that answered the question. And also educational material there around being able to display on the UI better information. That's something that we'll be looking into as well.
Yeah, I think that having something on the UI is something that always helps. And also we have a bunch of creators now on Flare. So you guys from the community can also, provide value this way. It's very important. So next question is for Hugo. What comes after the end of Flare drops? And does it make sense to replace it with another system to give new active users a chance to catch up to all the legacy users?
So the end of Flare drops is the end of Flare drops. I think the incentive program is really the way that new users will earn Flare effectively. Flare has always been designed to be distributed in this manner, and then for it to become a very low inflation token. So we have obviously inflation, but each year, relative to the amount of tokens that exist, the inflation rate falls. And over the very, very long term, the inflation rate falls effectively to zero. And so the idea to distribute the token was to distribute the token to people that stayed with Flare for a very long time, and for the token to effectively become as close to fixed supply as is possible within the context of staking. So the inflation rate dropping every year, basically after the Flare drops happens, is key to that. So I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. And since we are on time, I just want to ask one final question from Anubis, which is kind of connected with this, which is what sort of long-term role will the Flare token play?
Well, the Flare token, I'm actually looking at this, re-looking at this currently, but the Flare token secures the network. So if you think of the Flare data connector, if you think of the Flare time series oracle, the value of the Flare token secures those protocols. It secures the network itself. So it secures the network and it secures data. And there's various protocols that all of DeFi will rely on. So the FAssets, for instance, pretty much every DeFi application that exists on Flare relies on the FAssets. And in turn, the FAssets relies on Flare for its security in order to be able to effectively get data from other networks about what has happened on those networks. We need that FLR to be staked. And so, I'm looking at how, beyond just the FAssets, which already have fees baked in, I'm looking at how downstream protocols that use value that comes from the network's core protocols can kick back revenues to the network itself. So that's that's an area I'm looking at with regards to the long term of the FLR token.
Very interesting. We will see how things evolve. I'm super excited about what's coming up next. And I think that we are now on time. So first of all, thank you very much to all of our speakers, Hugo, Steve, Alexius, and Thanos, who had to leave. For the people in our audience, please make sure to follow all of our speakers here so that you stay informed, help educate others, help contribute to the expansion of the Flare ecosystem. And of course, thank you so much for taking the time to come here and gather with these great minds and have this honest conversation. Make sure to turn your notifications on for Flare, and let's keep building. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Well, guys, there we have it. I thought it was pretty interesting. Not really any crazy news. Of course, Hugo did get asked when FAssets, which he, I guess, very smartly dodged the question. I wasn't expecting much else, to be honest. But yeah, one thing that I did find pretty interesting was a little bit more details about the Spark token from SparkDEX. They did mention that there is going to be some sort of share of the fees generated. I'm going to have to re-listen to that and dig a little bit deeper in. You can probably expect a video on that in the near future. And yeah, I thought it was pretty good. What do you guys think? Just go like this. I think what I'll do is I'll probably get myself off. And for those who are interested, I think there is the Senate hearing with Brad Garlinghouse happening at this very moment, which should also be very interesting considering a lot of people in the Flare community are XRP holders. I'm probably going to tune into that and carry on with my day, but I do appreciate you all listening in live and joining me here. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. That is it for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all so